many buildings and many places that needed to be hit simultaneously. So our team started to fan out and started taking their areas of responsibility. Our specific team, Echo team, which was being led out by Nic Cheque, moved to our target building, and that we had assessed is where the Dr. Joseph was being held. And so as we started to get closer to the building, one of the Taliban guards had come out of the door with his rifle, and Nic Cheque immediately engaged him, and that started the catalyst of us rapidly accelerating our prosecution of the target. Nic took shots at him and began sprinting and moved in such a fashion that by the time I had a chance to react and started to maneuver to gain some space between us in case I had to also shoot, he was already 6 to 8 feet ahead of me. It was an instantaneous shots on target to forward progression to the door to prosecute this building. When we got to the building, which was only 20 to 30 feet away at this time, the door, we encountered something we had never encountered before on all of the prior years of doing combat operations. It was wool blankets that was multi-layered and cemented into the door frame on opposing sides. And so shots had already been fired, and in a hostage rescue mission, we had to move, because if they woke up and decided to execute American hostage, it is mission failure, and we did not do what it is we're designed to do as a military unit. And one of our first mission essential task lists is to do hostage rescue. And so a couple of us hopped on these blankets to try to rip them out of the door seam, and they were cemented in so well they couldn't do it. And it was, even after a couple seconds, we heard a voice from our troop chief who said, "Get the hell inside there, let's go." We were talking about matters of seconds here. There wasn't a long delay in time, but seconds were hours in this environment right now. And so as Nic started to weave his way through, there was more gunshots. You can't really see what was happening because you were having to push away multi-layers of blankets, these heavy wool, blankets. And it's very difficult too, because it's getting hung up on your gear, your guns, your night vision, all that stuff. I moved in right behind Nic, and I had stepped over something or someone, moved into my area of responsibility, which was to the left. And as I came in and presented my weapon, I saw somebody that was about 20 feet away from me, also starting to present a weapon towards me, and I was able to engage him and make some very clean shots in his head and dropped him right there. But it was a matter of just split seconds of him getting shots off on me versus the other way around. It was at that time that I noticed somebody scrambling across the floor that was moving towards those weapons, and by the time I was able to close with that person, I was able to lock them down on the ground, pinning them to the ground with my knees on their shoulders as I was adjusting my night vision to gain facial recognition. This entire time this person is trying to reach for these weapons and grab something, and well, I didn't know if this was one of the hostages that was scared and was trying to move, because there was no voices at this time, nothing was being called out. And it was roughly in that instance that we began to call out for Dr. Joseph, like somebody, is he in this room, will he say it? And there was no response, And this is all happening in just matters of seconds, right? So, after a few more of these call-outs to Dr. Joseph, I finally hear this voice, I'm over here. And it was not the person I was on top of, and it was a voice that was coming from my right-hand side. And so I made the decision to shoot the person that I was on top of, and whether it killed him or subdued him enough, I was able to then jump off of that person, and I leapt across the room and was able to jump on Dr. Joseph, because shots are now flying throughout this room. And so I jumped on Dr. Joseph to protect him with my body armor. it just happened to be, by the grace of God, that one of the other Taliban was within arm's reach of me, and I was able to hold Dr. Joseph against me with body armor, and within arm's reach I was able to reach over and pin that person against the wall by their throat. And fortunately what that had done was just given enough time for the rest of the team to make it inside and eliminate that threat. And so once that threat was eliminated, we went through doing the standard protocol of, asking him if he was hurt, asking him if he could, walk, asking him if they had been booby-trapped. He didn't know if they put a suicide vest on him or if there was a, grenade that was set up ready for the pin pulled. So we did with a coordination with our EOD, an explosives check on him, make sure he's okay, and then we started to move him. We moved Dr. Joseph outside. And as quickly as I just described what had happened in there, it was about how fast everything had happened. In just a matter of, I would say a few short minutes, we went from entering in the building to killing five of the terrorists and rescuing Dr. Joseph. When we had moved Dr. Joseph outside, because we were coming on really quickly for first light and we needed to get extracted, I had looked over and I saw that people were working on Nic. And so I had asked for a replacement to take over from security detail on Dr. Joseph, and I started going over and working on Nic and helping our Air Force pararescuemen, and started to do a head-to-toe assessment on Nic and begin to see what we could do to potentially save his life. After the helicopters landed, we quickly got on board and they took off, and for the next 40 minutes on our way back to Bagram, we treated Nic's wounds. We did interosseous or IO device IVs and started CPR on him, which we rotated through the entire flight. And it was at that time when we got to the cache, the military hospital on base, that the doctors, pronounced him dead on the scene. Unfortunately, Nic was succumbed to, he was shot in the head, and there was really not much we could do for him. But we knew if there was any chance we owed him that, to get him to a higher echelon of care to decide whether or not, it was for them to decide, the doctors, if there's anything more that we could do to save Nic's life. But that was the culmination of December 8th and how I ended up becoming a Medal of Honor recipient. That operation is at the top of the echelon of most decorated special operations missions there is. What came out of that, Nic Cheque became a Navy Cross recipient, as well as 3 other people on that operation, along with multiple Bronze Stars and things of that nature. But as I talked about in the past, and how I view being a recipient at the end of the day, and I'm just a holder of this medal, and while it's for my personal actions, it is really, they would never have been able, I would have never been able to do what I've done if it wasn't for my entire team as a whole and how we operated. Nic was an absolute warrior, and he was fearless, and he showed that night in his immediate actions and his aggression to go save an American doctor. And it really is an ode back to Clark Schwedler from 2007 to the men of Extortion 17, which is how I ended up on Gold Squadron, in their passing in just a year prior in 2011, and then with Nic Cheque. So every time I pick up this medal, I think about those 3 tragic incidences and all the lives of the warriors that were lost, that went into me being there on that night, and then subsequently being awarded this medal. There is very much a responsibility when you are a holder of this medal, a recipient of this medal, that you have a duty and obligation to promote its values and to tell the citizens of this nation what this represents. You know, this isn't winning a Grammy or a Super Bowl ring. This is about fighting for the ideals of our nation and what we stand for as Americans, as being a beacon of hope to the rest of the world. And what comes with, you don't get that for free. And you get that through blood, sweat, and tears of serving your country and going off into foreign lands and doing things that are just, frankly, they're not comprehensible to a good majority of people in our nation. And so there's a duty and responsibility to talk about why this medal is important and why those traits are important for our society as a whole. It's about sacrifice. It's about having courage to do the tough things.